low-calorie sweeteners, and or some people call them non-nutritive sweeteners. And non-nutritive sweeteners is probably like one of the most sort of controversial topics that are out there, so that's kind of a real interesting phenomenon. It's just, again, like one of the most controversial topics that are actually out there. Just a second here. So speaking of that, why it's so controversial? Well, you know, for years people will say, oh, low-calorie sweeteners will kill you, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're doing part one of this, which is covering some of the main low-calorie sweeteners and some of the main questions on low-calorie sweeteners. So what we did is, because it's such a big topic, we actually put 6 infographics out this week, and we're putting a lot more out later. So let's talk about those infographics. So the first one that we put up was, we talked about, do artificial sweeteners make you gain weight? Because a lot of people will ask, like, oh, but don't low-calorie sweeteners make you eat more? Well, first off, you have to understand, you always look at the context. So if you are eating, for example, low-calorie, if you like sodas or you like cake like I do, and you have real sugar in them, and you replace that sugar with low-calorie sweeteners, you will actually eat less and you'll lose more body fat than if you had the table sugar in there. So overall, the mechanism for that is you're replacing calories and you're lowering overall calories, okay? So it's important that you kind of understand that. A lot of times people ask, do low-calorie sweeteners make you hungrier? And the answer is no. That didn't seem to be the case. And so that's kind of the overall take-home message on that. So the next question is, are low-calorie sweeteners, do they have calories? Well, again, it depends on the low-calorie sweetener. Like aspartame has 4 calories a gram, but it's so sweet it doesn't matter. Sucralose, for example, doesn't. Stevia doesn't have calories. But the thing is that when you buy a packet of the low-calorie sweeteners, they have fillers inside of them. So if I buy a packet of Splenda or a packet of Equal, it's not just sucralose and aspartame in there. It's fillers, and the fillers are generally like maltodextrin, for example. So those do contain calories. And in fact, like a packet of Splenda has about 0.9 grams of carbs. So it's so sweet that you don't need to use as much as table sugar, so they just count it as non-calorie. But in reality, like a cup of the baking low-calorie sweetener that you get is actually around 24 grams of carbs, but that's a lot less than like the 90 grams of carbs you'd normally have in a cup of sugar. My point is, it's not free, because if you're, for example, low-carb or keto, and you had a cup of that a day, that's an extra 24 grams of carbs. How do you avoid that? The answer is you can actually buy these sweeteners in the raw. So if you buy them in the raw, then that actually, first off, it's very sweet, but then it won't have calories. So I think that's big because, you know, it's holiday season's coming up soon. Halloween's coming up. We'll be making a lot of Halloween treats, fall, Thanksgiving. Yeah, we got to make some Halloween foods.
Got some ideas, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And Christmas is going to come. I love the fall. Absolutely freaking love the fall. So anyway, so that's kind of a take-home message on that. So now let's talk about different sweeteners. We talked about stevia. We talked about aspartame, probably the most controversial, and we talked about sucralose. So stevia basically is found in basically the stevia plant. And stevia plant's been used for like, what, over 1,500 years?
Yeah.
Used for all sorts of reasons. It's been used a lot for medicinal purposes. Like it actually has antioxidant properties, anti-cancer properties, improves blood glucose regulation, actually antiviral properties. So stevia plant's actually been studied for a lot more than we think about it as a sweetener. But there's a lot of evidence that it has a lot of other benefits to it. So that's cool and that's an important topic. But what we really want to point out to you guys is that the leaf is sweet itself. So people could take, you can grow a stevia plant in your garden, like my parents, Floyd and Anita, they they love gardening, and they'll actually plant a lot of herbs and stuff. Well, if you actually planted the stevia plant and you boiled it, it would make like a tea sweet. In fact, it's 10 times sweeter than normal table sugar. But if you take it and you boil it and extract the sweet components, which are called stevioglycosides, those are a lot sweeter, and there's about 8 stevioglycosides that are in the stevia plant. And 2 of the main ones are stevioside and what's called Reb-A. And stevioside, when you buy a stevia and you notice it's like very bitter, that's more of the stevioside. And stevioside has basically a bitter aftertaste, and that's a lot of the essential oils in it. The flavonoids make it bitter. But there's another kind called Reb-A, and that's more sweeter and has a more pleasant aftertaste. So things like Truvia, for example, have more Reb-A than like raw stevia. The stevia raw you buy, and it's because it has more of the Reb-A and some erythritol in it. So anyway, stevia seems to be very safe. Lots of studies on the safety of stevia, and so I would definitely recommend stevia. The next thing is, but it also has a lot of health benefits, which I've mentioned many of them so far. But the thing to understand is, like, if you look at the health benefits, stevia, like one study I pointed out on the Muscle PhD this week, is that stevia can actually improve blood glucose regulation. And there's a number of reasons why it might do that. One is that it actually improves insulin sensitivity. So, meaning that insulin's effects actually work better with stevia. So one of the concerns is stevia stimulate insulin release. It seems like stevia can stimulate insulin slightly, but because it improves insulin sensitivity so much, it's a wash. If anything, it's actually more beneficial for you. So that's kind of a key thing to understand. So it improves insulin sensitivity and improves the function of the pancreas. So for people who are like borderline type 2 diabetics, if it's improving pancreatic function, stevia can be actually very beneficial for you. So the next thing we talked about was aspartame, right? And aspartame, that's the blue packet, right? And that's probably one of the most controversial ones that we have is the aspartame, and that's the brand for that's Equal, right?
Yes.
So anyway, but there's a bunch of other brands for it. But anyhow, if you're talking about this blue packet, this aspartame, what is it and is it safe? Well, first of all, it's very controversial. And the reason why it's controversial is because basically aspartame is a combination of the amino acids aspartic acid and phenylalanine. So if you have aspartame, basically when you break that down in the gut, remember per gram it's going to yield 4 calories, but it's very sweet, so you don't need much. But when you break down the gut, you have aspartic acid, phenylalanine, and methanol. Now, methanol can get converted to formaldehyde, and formaldehyde at high levels can be toxic to the body. Thing to understand is, to produce enough formaldehyde from the methanol that you yield from aspartame, you would need to drink like, how many liters?
What was it?
It's like
1,200 or 1,500?
Yeah, 13, like it was 36 liters.
Yes.
36 liters of diet soda. Now, you ask any of the guys in here, there have been times where I've drunk a lot of diet soda, like probably more than anyone watching this, but I'll be honest with you, like I've never come close to having more than a liter, right? And probably in a day. So to drink 36 liters in one sitting, one thing Andy pointed out earlier was that if you have too much, that you can't consume that much. You have physical limitations. So the point is that aspartame is actually very safe. Lots of studies on its safety, and et cetera, et cetera. So the next question that we answered was, does aspartame and stevia, does it make you eat more? Well, there's a study where basically they either gave like a high-calorie snack, like 400-calorie snack sweetened with sugar, or 200-calorie snacks sweetened with aspartame or stevia pre-meal. And they looked at what individuals ate the next meal. And what they found was that basically you don't eat more your next meal because you had the low-calorie sweetener compared to the higher-calorie snack, which is pretty interesting, I think. So it doesn't seem to make you eat more. And again, studies that show that you lose if you replace or substitute normal sugar, show you lose weight. Also show it helps you sustain weight. Last sweetener we talked about was sucralose, and it sounds a lot like sucrose, right? Table sugar. So what they do is they take table sugar, okay, and they replace the hydroxyl groups with chlorine atoms. And when you replace the hydroxyl groups with chlorine atoms, you make the sugar way sweeter, number one. In fact, like 600 to some studies show up to 1,000 times sweeter. And you make it not digestible, so it acts more like a fiber. The cool thing about sucralose, as opposed to like equal or aspartame, is that sucralose is actually heat stable, whereas aspartame is not. So that's I think really key point. So now let's go ahead and that's cool. Let's talk about overall we talked about that with sucralose and things of that nature. The question is, does sucralose stimulate insulin? Does it impair blood glucose regulation? The study I'm going to post later today showed that in healthy people, that sucralose did not stimulate insulin. In fact, it lowered insulin and improved insulin sensitivity. When you had about the amount of sucralose in half a cup of soda, it actually improved insulin sensitivity. But when you took like people who were like more borderline type 2 diabetic and obese, and you gave them sucralose, it seemed to do the opposite. Like it kind of impaired insulin signaling, it raised insulin levels and raised glucose. So what's the take-home message on this? If you're healthy and you're a normal weight, sucralose is fine. If you're obese or overweight, you might want to lean more towards stevia. The other thing that, like Ryan Lowry in our lab's really good at flavoring. He's very good. Anyone who's tasted his like flavors and stuff like that with drinks and stuff, he's really good at flavoring. And basically, you have different sweeteners. Like you have front-end sweeteners, back-end sweeteners, and sucralose is more like a front-end sweetener, whereas stevia is more like a back-end sweetener. So, if you kind of make a combination of different sweeteners, like Andy just made these fat bombs, which are unreal, he used a combination of sweeteners, so it's kind of hitting you in the front and the back.
And comparing it to sugar has a tendency to be all over the place in your mouth, but when you combine the artificial or natural sweeteners, the lower calorie ones, and you combine them, and you find the right ratio, you got to work with it. And use it a few times, but once you do that, and you can find kind of like a blend that's very similar to sugar.
Yes. So that's key, guys, is using a blend. So, guys, with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up your guys' questions. And actually, I can see your questions live here. But I'm also going to, I got some questions on Instagram as well. Let's keep the questions to, low-calorie sweeteners or things of that nature. So, you want to hit me up? Let's go.
Where do you buy artificial sweeteners in the raw? You can find them anywhere.
I mean, I get artificial sweeteners in the raw. I just go to Amazon.com, personally. Okay, what about artificial sweeteners causing increased weight gain? To be honest, when you look at weight gain in artificial sweeteners, you're looking at epidemiological studies. So there are some certain epidemiological studies that show that basically there's an association between low-calorie sweeteners and obesity, but what you're really seeing is an association there. So for example, when ice cream sales goes up, drownings go up. It doesn't mean ice cream's causing drownings. It means that when it's hot, ice cream sales go up, and when it's hot, you swim more. And so there's more drownings. Similar in this case, when people are overweight, they tend to want to find low-calorie sweeteners, and it's not causation. When you do controlled trials and you replace normal sugar with low-calorie sweeteners, you lose fat, and people are taught to use low-calorie sweeteners to sustain that fat loss. So,
best low-calorie sweetener for keto?
Best low-calorie sweetener for keto, I go with what Andy says, a combo,
Yeah.
wouldn't you say?
I do a blend
Yeah.
because using the ones that have a tendency to be lower calories overall, and you have to use such a minute amount of them that I mean, any blend is going to be good. All right for keto.
Yeah.
It's going to be better than consuming sugar.
Yeah. And
So-
actually, do you find that you need to use less of each sweetener with the
100%. 100%. You're talking about grams,
Yeah.
whereas say I would bake a cake and use half a cup of sugar. With artificial sweeteners or natural sweeteners, I can use 10% of that,
Okay.
if not 20% of that,
Yeah.
and still get the same sweetness.
Perfect.
So
Perfect. So definitely use a combination. Okay, let's see. So basically, someone's asking about. I'm sorry. What else we got? There's a lot of keto questions. I'm just trying to get like questions relative. Splenda versus stevia, please. I think that if you're healthy, they're probably the advantage of stevia is it has a lot of other health benefits.
yes,
So if I were to choose one based on health benefits, I'd probably go with stevia. I just like a combination of the two. Are there any GI tolerance differences or concerns amongst the non-nutritive sweeteners? Really, it's when you get to the sugar alcohols, I find that you have intolerances, which we'll cover, I think, in the next fat loss month. We'll go to sugar alcohols, like erythritol, for example. If you look at like stuff like vitamin water, you see it has like 5 carbs and no calories. It's because erythritol in it. Erythritol, someone's asking how safe it is on keto. Very safe. In fact, it seems to improve blood glucose regulation, which is good. Improve insulin sensitivity, which is good for fat metabolism, because insulin sensitivity may be even limited for fat metabolism. So I'd recommend erythritol for sure. And also, it's good for like creating like we made. Andy made these fat bombs, and he put a little bit of the erythritol in there. It's got like that, almost like that crunch, you know.
Yeah.
Same thing with the sugar cookies I made last night. It has kind of a crunch. Why do so many folks in the keto world believe artificial sweeteners cause an insulin response? If you have a ton, like a lot of the studies with that are giving ridiculously large amounts in isolation. If you're having it with a very high fat meal, that's not going to happen, right? So I wouldn't be worried about that. All right, so next question. Do you have an opinion on artificial sweeteners affecting gut bacteria? Says Sergio Martinez. Good question, Sergio. Okay, here's the thing to understand. There's a recent study that came out on aspartame, and it showed no negative impact on the gut bacteria. Some studies show improvements in healthy bacteria with like aspartame. When you look at studies that show like negative impact on gut bacteria, they're usually rat or mice studies giving amounts of these non-nutritive sweeteners that you would never consume in the real world. So overall, and studies in neonatal pigs where you can actually look directly at the gut actually shows sometimes it improves like lactobacillus and a lot of positive bacteria. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. Okay, so I'm going to answer a few more questions here. Let's see. Someone has a question. I'm going to pull up my Instagram real quick because I had people ask questions on there. So, under most recent / relevant studies, the effect that they have on muscle hypertrophy and or fat loss under moderate to excessive consumption, providing individual optimal fiber consumption is met. Well, artificial sweeteners aren't going to negatively impact muscle hypertrophy from anything I see. And because they help you not select as high calorie foods out, because you're subbing out, the net decline in calorie consumption would lead theoretically to fat loss. So, all right. So next question that we have is, let me go real quick. I haven't set up my question and answer thing here.
Can we talk about soluble fiber versus IMOs?
Yeah. Someone asked that?
Yep.
So soluble corn fiber versus IMOs.
Somebody asked the question.
Yeah, ask the question.
So I saw your video about IMOs versus soluble corn fiber. I just wanted to know if you have any findings yet about soluble corn fiber.
Yeah, basically we do have findings on soluble corn fiber. Soluble corn fiber is a true fiber, and that's only, and then IMOs are not. So soluble corn fibers are longer chain length, more resistant bonds, and so that is a true fiber, whereas IMOs are less resistant bonds, but really shorter chain lengths. And so basically those are digested pretty much fully. We found that in our lab. So if you look at the back of a protein bar and it goes fiber and it says isomalto oligosaccharides, it's probably not a fiber. And I would imagine after our research and other people, they're going to have to change those labels on the protein bars. But if you see soluble corn fiber, it is a fiber. So we're going to go ahead and take about 2 more questions here. Let's see. Do you need to be in a 10 to 20% surplus over maintenance to maximize hypertrophy, or does a long climb into extreme calories with reverse dieting give similar results over time? So here's the thing. To optimize hypertrophy, we know that consuming excess calories can be beneficial. But we did a study where we basically increased calories by like 500 to 800 on a daily basis, compared to like having an extra like 1,500 calories a day. And basically what we found is that the people who only had like the 500, 800 extra calories a day gained purely lean mass. The people who had the 1,500 extra calories a day, even though it's more extreme, gained as much muscle as the lower calorie group, but the rest of it was all fat. So, yeah, I would more recommend a conservative approach. You don't need that much excess calories to maximize hypertrophy, I don't think. And actually, it can cause insulin resistance, in which case you negatively impact hypertrophy. So let's see what else we got. Next questions. Hey, Doc, will you be covering sugar alcohols like the erythritol? Yes, and I do. I am a fan of erythritol. Xylitol, I think, is
Xylitol is alright. Then you
Yeah.
get into ones like maltol, which maltol almost has the exact same calories as regular sugar,
Yeah.
and it causes a lot of GI issues.
Yeah. So basically, again, and xylitol could definitely cause more GI issues than like erythritol. So erythritol is my favorite. Xylitol maybe second. Maltol probably not so much. A lot of GI distress. So let's see what we got here. What's your go-to diet soda? Okay, great question. Now it is a really good question. My favorite diet soda has to be root beer. Like I'm a root beer, like, yeah, that's my thing is root beer. I love root beer. My favorite root beer, I would say, if it's just like, normal, I'm going to go A&W. But I'm trying to remember my favorite one. I'd say my go-to is A&W. But I also like Barks. I like Mug. And there's another one, I can't remember what is it called?
Not your father's root beer?
Yeah. I can't remember my favorite root beer. But anyway, it'll come to me. So yeah, there you go. What's better for contest prep, keto or low carb and low fat? Depends on you. Depends on you. If you're insulin resistant, keto. If you're not, your food preference. I think the easiest thing to do is selecting a diet where you're not as hungry. You're not as hungry on keto. So guys.